est ravi aujourd'hui d'accueillir David, qui travaille sur une cluster. David est géorgien. Et comme les géorgiens qui travaillent sur la microbiologie, il a beaucoup travaillé sur les phages. Maintenant, il ne veut pas dire que ça s'appelle des bactériophages. Il fait partie des gens, avec Patrick Fortin, qui disent qu'on ne doit pas appeler les virus de bactéries des bactériophages. On va appeler ça les virus de bactéries. Donc, c'est une des raisons. On n'est pas avec Patrick Fortin, bien que Patrick Fortin ait publié avec moi le virophage, il ne veut plus l'appeler le virophage, il veut l'appeler le virus de virus. Donc, c'est une querelle sémantique qui n'est pas très importante parce que c'est inutile. Mais ensuite, il s'est spécialisé dans les virus d'Archea. Et le virus d'Archea, c'est un monde gigantesque, avec probablement, en tout cas c'est ce qu'on discutait, du fait de la spécificité des écosystèmes des Archea, une diversité biologique qui est supérieure à celle des systèmes qui sont mutualisés. C'est ce qu'on voit partout dans le vivant. Quand un système est mutualisé, il y a la globalisation arrive, une homogénéisation, une sélection. Tandis que quand il y a des écosystèmes, la biodiversité est beaucoup plus conservée quand il y a des écosystèmes différents que quand les écosystèmes sont mis en commun. Donc c'est un monde dont on peut attendre une biodiversité absolument extraordinaire. C'est dans son laboratoire avec Patrick Fortin la référence mondiale sur le virus d'Archea. Vous saurez tout sur les virus d'Archea à la fin de sa présentation. Voilà. Je voulais demander à
Thank you very much for the introduction and thank you very much for the invitation. I will be speaking in English. My French is very basic, so if you would like to discuss in French, you may ask in French, but I will probably answer in English later. So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It's a very important place for anyone just to come here. Thank you for the invitation once more. So my talk will be about viruses for Archea. And before I start talking about them, maybe I should remind you very briefly what are Archea. So, the discovery of Archea, the group at the highest taxonomical level next to domains of bacteria and eukarya, was probably one of the most important discoveries in the biology of the last century. It has changed the dichotomic perception of the living world into prokaryotes and eukaryotes and representing the last as three domains, bacteria, archaea, and eukarya, each of them representing the independent line of descent from the last universal common ancestor. Archaea in their self-organization are similar to bacteria. These lay like windows, and in this sense can be considered as prokaryotes. However, they can be distinguished by phylogenetic and biochemical properties and by adaptation to chronic stress conditions, which is often considered to be a major parameter governing their ecology and evolution. Archaea can be roughly divided into 5 physiological and metabolic groups. 2 physiological groups belong extreme halophiles. These are Archaea, which are thriving at very high, nearly saturated concentrations of sodium chloride. These are hyperthermophiles, which are optimally growing at temperature above 80 degrees centigrade, and these are acidophiles, which are growing at pH values down to 0. And some organisms, like Zoophilotus presented here, are extreme acidophiles and thermophiles, which means that they are optimally growing literally in body acid. The metabolic groups include metanogens. These are obligate anaerobics which are gaining energy by reduction of carbon dioxide to methane, and these are the major methane producers on our planet, and ammonium oxidizers, anaerobic ammonium oxidizers. Archaea comprise about 30% of prokaryotic biomass on our planet, and they are everywhere, but there are habitats in which they absolutely dominate. For example, if you go to extreme geothermal environments like those shown here, where the terrestrial or marine linked with volcanic activity, you have absolute dominance of Archaea in this habitat, and they are the only organisms which are growing about 80 degrees centigrade. So this is a diagram where we include the Archaea and you see that only Archaea are growing at 85 and above temperatures, and at lower values of pH, they are the only organisms also at lower temperatures. Another environment in which Archaea are absolutely dominating are hypersaline waters, like artificial saltwater or like Dead Sea or Great Lake, and these are actually the two types of environments from which Archaea viruses have been isolated so far. I'm personally interested in viruses from extreme geothermal environments and will be talking about them. My interest in these viruses started in '95 when, together with Wolfgang Zillig, we organized a sampling expedition to Icelandic hot springs. And the idea was actually to isolate phages of Archaea for transcription studies. Wolfgang Zillig was a very good name in transcription regulation, transcription studies in bacteria, and being interested in Archaea, he wanted to have such a wonderful models like Archaea phages for transcription studies. So that was the original interest of Zillig for these viruses. However, what we have seen in hot springs of Iceland was really amazing. We have never observed that any head-and-tailed archaeophage-like virus. And the diversity of these viruses which we observed there was incredible, contradicting to any expectations. And since then, since '95, I'm interested per se in Archaea viruses and try to isolate them from different locations, from different terrestrial hot springs. And until now, we have sampled 6 different locations in 3 continents, and in our group isolated 23 different viruses from these samples about which I will be talking today. These 23 samples are comprised 75% of all known hyperthermophilic Archaea viruses, so describing them out how probably the whole diversity of these viruses. Amazing is the fact that they are so diverse morphologically and genomically that for their classification, 10 families have to be proposed, and 8 of them are now approved and 2 are pending. So this is really remarkable, and there are families with only one representative, which is so unique in any features that you cannot assign it to any group. So I will briefly describe these families and start from probably the most unexpected virus, which we isolated from a hot spring near Pozzuoli in Italy, close to the volcanic area. This is what we call bottle-shaped virus. So the virus has the shape which you would never imagine in the virus world. It lacks any elements of icosaedral or helical symmetry, which is considered to be part of virus material structure. It is analog, and inside analog resides a nucleoprotein filament condensed in this condensed, and you see this filament released in these partially broken particles. And on the bottom of this bottle-shaped particle, there are 20 filaments inserted into the ring, and their function remains unknown because the virus absorbs to a host cell to the pointed end-index DNA, and why these 20 filaments are required for this virus is absolutely unclear, and based on what we know presently about virus biology, it is also impossible to suggest why this region has to have these 20 filaments or should not be decoration. Very unusual feature is also the virus, also from Pozzuoli, from Italian springs, which we call two-tailed virus, which is released from the host cell as this spindle-shaped particles, which later, independent from the host cell, develop protrusions from the pointed end, and eventually the whole population is two-tailed. And this cell development occurs independent of the host cell, outside of the host cell, and the only requirement is that the temperature in the environment is close to the natural temperature of the habitat, about 80 degrees centigrade, and 80 degrees are enough to trigger this tail development. And this is the sophistication, if you want to say like that, because this major virus is more stable than those tail develop, and development of tails occurs only when there are chances to meet the proper host. And this is very important. For example, if you are in Iceland, you see that both springs are next to the ice, and then of course the virus are exposed to ice, they won't have chances to meet host. So they really maturate when they have chances to meet the proper host. So this is some kind of sophistication also not expected from viruses. We have in the collection also the tailless spindle-shaped particles, which are comprising two genera of this family, and one genera is really pleomorphic, as you see, and we can recognize that they form the same family. And what is very nice for these virus specifically, we could include establish a plot test. So I don't know whether you're aware of the plot test, but this is now the assay when you make a lawn of the potential host, and then in this lawn you embed the virus, and the virus grows and either clears the environment where it grows or in the source grows. And these are plugs. And you could decide, of course, the host grows at 95 degrees pH 3, and for this purpose you are not using agar, which is something trivial for phage, and for plug assays we use a specific polysaccharide for gelride, which is solid at pH down to 1 and temperatures up to 90 degrees centigrade. And there's another virus which I wanted to show of similar morphology but different family, which we call Butaviridae, which is ovoid, I would say, with a build end. All these morphologies which I show are absolutely unique for Archea and for hot environments, for Archea. So they have never been found infecting any bacteria or any plant, as a matter of fact. Unique for Archea is also this virus, which we originally call coil-shaped virus. So in the negative contrasted viruses like rod, you can distinguish the helical arrangement on the surface, but in cryo-electron microscopy, where the images are embedded in vitreous ice and more close to the natural structure, you see that the particles are more flexible and they are very clearly helical. And actually the particle is just a helix, hollow helix without any helix. And this is also something very unexpected and unique. Even more unique is this virus because of its genome. All viruses which I presented until now and will be presenting later have double-stranded DNA genomes. And only this virus, this coil-shaped virus, has single-stranded genome. And the single-stranded genome is up to 25,000 nucleotide per chrome, which is far larger than any known single-stranded DNA genome until now. So it's 3 times the record holder virus. Of course, it was very interesting to understand at least how this kind of large circular genome could be packed in this kind of particles. So, for answering this question, we have observed partially disrupted particles. For example, here you see completely disrupted particle. When you see the filament forming the coil completely unwound, it measures 4,000 nanometers. But what is more interesting is that in the certain regions, you see that the filament itself is composed of 2 intertwining filaments. Here, for example. And this kind of observations allow us to build up the model of the virion architecture. So the circular single-stranded genome is covered with protein subunits, and then two parts of this twist like a rope around each other and form the filament, which itself makes the next level of superhelical organization and goes into this row the spiral viridae. The next family which I really want to introduce is the family ifr48. So these are monofilamentous particles and the rope. And also for these particles, we could establish Planck tests, and we see Planck's, Planck's are formed due to retardation of the post growth on the rope. And we have many members of this family isolated from different locations in the United States, in Europe, in Iceland, in Italy, on the Azores in Portugal, and they all differ with terminal structures. And as an example, I will show the most spectacular case of these claw-like terminal structures, which are folding upon the absorption of the host cell pili. You see this is the host cell pili. And the first step of absorption of the bars with the host is that it absorbs the pili, and the claws fold upon this filamentous structure. So the virion is envelope, as I said, so it consists of the lipid-containing envelope and inner chemical core, and consists of two proteins only. And the structure of these proteins has been solved in Archea in the laboratory of Christian Cambio by X-ray crystallography, and the structures of these two proteins turn out to be amazingly similar. They both carry unique 4-helix bundle fold, and despite the similarities, they have different physical-chemical properties, different hydrophobicity, which allows to postulate such a model of the virion structure. So the basic protein forms the core around which the DNA is wrapped, and the larger protein is interacting with the DNA, with the terminus, and the C-terminus is embedded in liquid outer. Another family of linear viruses which we have isolated is non-envelope. They are called viruses, and they are just a simple nucleoprotein, which is double-stranded DNA covered with subunits of highly isolated major code protein. The structure is very similar to that of tobacco mosaic virus, but the DNA in this case is double-stranded DNA rather than single-stranded RNA, as in the case of GM. And also for this virus, we could establish a Planck test. A Planck test, and why the Planck are formed, I will talk about this later. Surprisingly, the structure of the major capsid protein of this virus turned out to be highly similar to the structures of the major capsid proteins of the Lipotix virus. Here is that from this virus, and this is from Lipotix virus. They are highly similar in the structure, although on amino acid sequence level, the similarity is very low, like 14%. And this 4-helix bundle fold is really unique because you don't have something like that in the viral world. The TMP does have the 4-helix bundle fold, but this fold is clearly different from that from CFA81, as a matter of fact, or from the 4-helix fold of another antivirus, Tautenverse ATV, which was also resolved in the lab of Christian Cambio. And without doubt, these proteins, this plant and this active protein do not share. This is a member of the family clavavirus, isolated from Japanese particle recently. These particles are in bacillic form with asymmetrical ends, one of which is rounded, the other is pointed. And the collection of also spherical viruses also unusual because this, for example, is envelope, and inside envelope resides nucleoprotein 4 in helical arrangement. And this is also something unknown in the world. You do have viruses similar in this arrangement, but they are single-stranded RNA viruses, and there is no clear demonstration of virus with this kind of structure known. And the only virus actually in the collection of 23 viruses, which are briefly introducing now, which resembles something known from other two domains, is this virus, this DID from Icelandic spring, the structure of which was discovered in Helsinki. And this virus, non-analog virus with inverted analog, resembles tectiviruses of bacteria. And moreover, the major capsid protein has double genetic log structure for members of the family Tectobacteriaceae, as well as for other viruses. So, this is now a very brief introduction to the families which we are studying. And now I wanted to say several words how do we isolate these viruses. So usually they say that if you go to aquatic environments and count the viruses, you have about 100 million virus particles per milliliter in seawater. That is what people claim. If you go to those environments which we study and make the same staining, we don't see anything. We don't see none of viruses, so the density is very, very low. In order to isolate something from this kind of sample of food, you have to enrich them, and this is what we have done with all samples which we can until now analyze. So we're taking environmental sample and we are establishing enrichment cultures from that, and then we analyze this kind of enrichment cultures and try to isolate viruses already from there rather than from the natural environment. And actually, for the first time, summarized all the approaches which we were using to isolate viruses from this kind of cultures. So one approach, which is most simple and which we tried already together with Bonn in Iceland, was to make a lawn of the potential hosts and to make drops of enrichment culture on these lawns. And if there is a virus which is infecting the host, then you will have clearing, exactly like you see on this picture. So here, with the white arrows, are those clearings which are produced by the virus-producing strains. But many of the clearings are formed by this kind of vesicles, which are kill cells produced and which contain toxins against closely related strains. Something similar to bacteriocins, if you remember them. So we call these toxins supervisors. So a very high proportion of our kill cells do produce these vesicles containing toxins, specifically against closely related strains. So another approach which we used to isolate viruses from the enrichment was based on isolation of single clones and then analysis of these clones for the presence of extra chromosomal elements. So we prepare the DNA and then we check whether there is something extra chromosomal there which will be indicative of virus presence. And in this way we could isolate several viruses in all of which had circular genomes present in the cell in high copy number, but mostly what we isolated with this approach were conjugated plasmids. So we have isolated different families of conjugated plasmids when we were trying to isolate viruses with this approach. The approach which actually proved to be the most fruitful until now was observation of virus-like particles directly in these enrichment cultures. So we were analyzing enrichment cultures directly by electron microscope, looking if there is anything which resembles virus, and if this culture contains something like that, then we were isolating single colonies from this and trying to isolate those which produce virus or those which are potential, which can be infected with this virus. And this approach proved to be the most efficient and most exotic viruses which I presented here were isolated with this approach. Of course, this approach also had a side effect, so to say, because not all particles which you see in the electron microscope and resemble viruses do represent viruses. For example, these little like particles we thought for a long time are viruses. And And then we purified that and analyzed. There was no nucleic acid there. And when we made protein analysis, this turned to be containing only one protein with tetrathionate hydrolase, the genuine cellular enzyme. So the genuine cellular enzyme is extruded from cell in this particle formed by flow. Anyway, not all, which looks like viruses is. Unfortunately, we were not able to isolate all viruses which we observed in our in vitro cultures. For example, this wonderful immature virus we do observe, but we're never able to isolate them. And this wonderful particles which we call ananas shape, which we observed last week actually when a sample from Japan, we are still trying to isolate. So very unusual shapes. So I hope I have convinced you by now that the morphological diversity of archaeal viruses is really amazing and different from what you expect to be in this environment, which you think is containing a limited biodiversity. Now about the genomes. So the genomes of these viruses can be linear or circular. As I've said, 22 are double-stranded DNA genomes, one is circular single-stranded, about which I have talked already. So the linear genomes have different modifications. They have a covalently attached protease on the end, or they have covalently bound forming a continuous polynucleotide chain like in viruses. The circular ones are always containing integrase, through which they are integrated into the host genome. The linear ones we have never observed integrated into the host genomes. The viruses which are integrated, they form proviruses which you may actually induce. And for example, in this case, when we were looking for the viruses of pyramids, we thought that, well, there are so many reports now that bacteria and archaeal genomes are full of integrated viruses or proviruses. And we thought, why don't we try now to induce these potential proviruses which we could identify in silico analysis? And indeed we could. So we just tried to grow this strain, this genome, in suboptimal conditions with very low aeration. This is obligate aerob growing at 95 degrees centigrade. And when we grew it at oxygen supply, then we induced these both proviruses and could isolate this different types of viruses. So now about the genome content. So in line with unique morphotypes of the viruses, the genomes are also unique, and the analysis being pushed to the limits of significance, which was done by Eugene Kuhn, did not reveal any hits with sequences in extended sizes other than other archaeal viruses. Very, very low proportion of the genes with known functions, and many viruses, like for example those which are presented here, are really, really terra incognita, because none of these genes has any similarity to anything in the databases. So of course, if you have this kind of genomes, you try to understand functions by some similarity to other proteins. This approach fails. So one possibility to understand functions in this situation is to presume that the 3D structure is more conserved along longer evolutionary distances and try to resolve the structures and have hints for possible functions. And indeed, in collaboration with different laboratories, was here in my series with young we have resolved structures of many proteins of different families. And unfortunately, also flows are quite unique, so they don't resemble anything. So there is also low chances when the structure guides you to potential structure. So there are of course some cases when we could still verify suggested functions biochemically. So one example is this transcription regulator result structure, which linear structure was done in collaboration with Wilhelm here at our institute. So this is ribbon helix protein, which turned out to control expression of its own promoter in about 20% of our genes. And when we tried to go into some details about the question, we were surprised to find out that the binding side of this is about 60 to 90 base pair away from the transcription start side. So it was impossible to understand how this would work. Here. So this is now the transcription start side, which is binding the transcription initiation complex with the factors DFP, DGP, and R base. So in order to understand how this suppression works, we made a lot of the DNA footprinting analysis and also atomic scores microscopy, and eventually came up with this what we call run and keep model, when the protein binding to the primary binding site polymerizes into different directions and bends DNA and eventually polymerizes up to the promoter. This is the run phase of the code, and later polymerization results in kicking off the initiation, the transcription initiation complex and transcription. So I don't want to go into the details of any kind of molecular processing. We have started also replication mechanism of the virus, understanding of which was possible still based on the results of structural genomic analysis. So one of the proteins of the project virus turned out to be the red protein, member of the family of proteins which initiate replication of many viruses and plasmids, replicating by rolling circle. But in this case, this protein is not really utilizing the rolling circle replication. The model of replication is absolutely different. I will not go into the details of that. That may be too much, as believe me. That's the first case when this red protein is actually involved in this kind of replication model. Very unusual is the replication mechanism of another virus which we studied in some detail every one. Actually, the ends of the human genome were full of repeats and incorrect repeats of the pentanucleotide and pentanucleotide resembling the telomeres of the eukaryotic chromosomes. So we postulated that maybe there is some kind of creative telomerase is acting in the replication of the genome, and the mechanism was studied in some detail the mechanism of the replication of the genome. And again, I will not go into some detail, but I will tell you that indeed the replication mechanism in some aspects resembles replication of mitochondrial DNA, and in some respects resembles the anti-replication of the eukaryotic telomeres. So, anyway, these viruses, which why I'm talking about this, is to emphasize that the viruses are not only unique in their morphology, not only they do have unique genomes, but also the functions which they are doing, the known functions are having some kind of peculiarities like the transcription regulation or replication, which I have reduced, but also, as it turned out, they have not only unique solutions to known processes, but they do have unique processes of the virus biology. And about that, I will want to talk a little bit here in some detail. This was revealed in the detailed study of interaction of this rod-shaped virus with its host. So as you see, there are plaques formed on the host cells, and we presume that these plaques are due to retardation of the host growth because we were never able to observe any lysis of the cell or formation of cell debris in the course of virus replication. And indeed, when we add this virus to the drawing host cell, then the host growth is stopped here. But most surprising that in the course of the stop growth, the number of colony-forming units was going down. So the cells were absolutely dead. There was no viable cell left after infection. And this was confirmed by flow cytometry. Indeed, flow cytometry has confirmed that after 6 hours, there is no chromosomal DNA left in the cell. All chromosomal DNA is degraded, And the only DNA which you have in the cell is from this virus. And we do not see the lysis of this virus. So to understand what is going on, we try to look at the host cells in the microscope. So this is now host cell in scanning peripheral microscope, and this is thin section negatively stained of the negatively stained preparation for the host cell. And when you infect the cells with the virus, then very soon after infection, on the surface of the cells appear these pyramidal protrusions, which in thin sections look like these triangles which you see here, and you probably will see better than on the next slide. You see these pyramidal protrusions on the surface of those cells. They perforate this layer, so here cell surface is quite simple. It's covered just with this layer. And then these pyramids perforate if pointed outwards. And when we were lucky to have a thin section in the plane which was parallel to the cell surface, then we could indeed see that this protrusion had this heptagonal base, confirming that this is a pyramid. Parallel to the pyramids, we could observe in infected cell formation of the virions. You may remember that the virus which we are now studying is this rod-shaped virus. So we see this rod-shaped virions inside the cell. And very close to the end of the viral cycle, in the pyramidal protrusions, we observe these spherical bodies of high density, and very soon after that, there are no pyramids on the cell surface. The cell surface is perforated, and through these perforations, we could observe extrusion of virions. And if you make thin sections, then you see that the cell remains like a cell structure, but it is absolutely empty. So these are the pyramids opening here. And this is a slide which summarizes this quite unique life cycle of the virus, when about 8 hours post-infection, all chromosomal DNA is degraded. The virus is assembled in the virion, coinciding with the appearance of the pyramids, and later pyramids open in this virion. And this is now a selection of electron micrographs showing the regular ocular pyramidal protrusions. So this is really a very unique mechanism theory of release. The number of protrusions on this cell was so high that we thought that it would be possible to detect any changes in the protein pattern of the infected cell, and just to follow protein pattern by electrophoresis, specifically in different fractions, and in the membrane fraction, coinciding with the appearance of the pyramid, we could observe this about 10 kilodalton protein pyramid, which turned out to be encoded by the virus. And this protein is so abundant in the membrane fraction that we're attempting to look at this membrane fraction, which is applied here in the electron microscope, and what we saw there was unexpected. We saw that the membrane fraction is full of these pyramids. So these pyramids turn out to be independent and stable structural formations, which we could purify from the membrane fraction by immunoprecipitation with antibodies against this protein. And here you have the purified pyramids. We call them VAPs, virus-associated pyramids. So these are the pyramids in the closed form. This is the side view, and this is the top view of these pyramids. And part of the pyramids are open because we isolated them 10 hours post-infection, when part of these pyramids are already opening, and also open pyramids turn out to be stereo. So what you see here are the open pyramids, and the cover slide of my presentation also presenting this wonderful flower-like structure. So, in order to confirm that the pyramids contain this virus encoded 10 kilodalton protein, we perform fluorescent immunomicroscopy. So this is microscopy on isolated pyramids, where you see that the protein is indeed in the pyramid, and this is now the topoisomy technique on infected cells, when you see that the label is along the protrusions here from the cell surface, or in the section parallel to the cell surface is arranged. So the progeny is the part of the myelin, and we are of course having this isolated analyze whether there are any other component of this pyramid except as well protein and terraton. So this protein is the only constituent of this fascinating pyramids. So some pyramids we could isolate in this form, and these are labeled actually making some diagrams, three-dimensional diagrams, and also measurements which indicated that the pyramid grew by expansion of the faces. So the angles here are always inserted. So the pyramid grows from very small just by expanding its faces. And now I want to show you something which I like very much to show because it was done by a 15-year-old son of my colleague who was fascinated with what we have now observed and made a movie about that. And I think that it is amazing what 15-year children can make nowadays. I hope you see now this virus infecting the host, injecting its DNA, and then the virus assembles in the neuron, and assembles in the bunches of about 50 neurons there. At this moment, there start to appear pyramids on the surface of those cells. And the bunches of the viruses disintegrate, and now this pyramid, which is still intact, these viruses are still inside the host itself, open, and it releases the neurons on there. And eventually, the host being perforated still keeps this stable structure, and that's why we were never observing any formation of debris or something there in the infected host itself. So the virus is the only constituent of the pyramid, and of course it was interesting whether it is also self-sufficient to assemble into the pyramidal shape, into pyramidal formation. So we express this virus in a Archea strain which is not a host for the virus. And only the presence of this protein was sufficient to form the pyramid on the surface of the cell, which is not a host. And anyway, this is Archea, so one can argue that Archea, so they can have some similar genes. So we express this protein in E. coli, which does not have any with Archea, and that is what happens with E. coli cells. So you see that the inner membrane is full of pyramidal protrusions which protrude into the peripheral space, however they cannot open, they are really in the peripheral place. And neither in the case of coli, nor in the sulfurous heteroglycolic spread pyramids were able to open, apparently there is something which has to trigger this process, and that's what we want to understand this now. When Lira was visiting us and we briefly talked about that, he said, why don't you express now in eukaryotic cell? Because you have expressed now in Archea, in bacteria, and why not eukaryotic? So we did as a cell and we expressed on yeast. And you notice something amazing what happens in yeast. It is in all membranes. It's in all membranes. It's in Golgi, it is in microbes, it's everywhere. So I don't have this image.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, they are not yet published on this one. They don't show, but thank you very much for this very good idea. So anyway, now, this is the virus, and there are two kinds of structure units encoded by viruses. Until now, we knew that the viruses are encoding capsids, and that's the only structural unit which is encoded by viruses. And now, we see that this virus is encoding another structural unit, very different from the capsid, with a very different function. And probably this is maybe one first member of the new class of the virus-encoded structures, different from the capsid, and we have even suggested a name like viral. But anyway, viral. But if you have any better still substitute, it's only one of the other.
Varrogates.
Varrogates, yes.
Varrogates.
Already, so maybe Varrogates. So, of course, when you see all these images, at least for my case, I started to see viruses from a very different perspective, from a different point of view. And actually my ideas about the nature of viruses have changed throughout all our studies on the Archea viruses. So I want to involve you also in these considerations and ask you what is the nature of this biological entity which is shown here. So this is a host cell 10 hours post-infection. So there is no, so this is not a host cell anymore because there is no chromosomal DNA there. And the only genetic information which is in this is from the virus. And the only objective of this entity is just to produce as many viruses as possible, not to reproduce the cells. And the whole surface has been modified in the needs of the virus. So the virus is in total control of this structure which it has actually stolen or absorbed or something from the cell. So, and for me it was a very clear example that this is really a virus factory. So what we see here is a total archaeal cell transformed into the virus factory.
Independent.
Sorry?
Independent.
Independent.
Yeah.
And so this is really not the virus which we are calling viruses. This is a virion, and this is a virus or sensory virus cell. So it was very important to me to realize that the viruses are also the organisms, and I'm following the view of the concept which was proposed by that there are two types of living entities on the planet. These are, like we call them, ribosome-encoding and capsid-encoding organisms. In other words, there are cells and viruses which are two different kinds of organisms, and if these are two different types of biological entities on this planet with different interests, of course it is very natural to conclude that there was an antagonism between these two types of biological entities throughout the whole history of evolution. And maybe this war between viruses and cells was a major engine for evolution. And this is the subject about which we have studied for that. We have written several essays, and of course we are seeing influence of viruses on the host cell evolution in the framework of theory of evolution. So the viruses are really the major source of variation because many novelties can be first developed and verified in the viral world and later transferred through the host, and of course the viruses are the major source of selective variation. Now I want to come back to the viruses which we have described and indicate that this diversity, what I have described, is infecting viruses, infecting hosts which are picotemophiles, representing one film of the Archea, mainly different Archea. So hosts of all these viruses are picotemophiles, and it is not very clear whether what we are seeing is due to the environment specific or due to specific hosts. So for this purpose it was necessary to see what are the viruses of those Archea which are not picotemophiles, for example, extreme homophils or metanogens, which are mesophilic members of the Archea domain. We have never isolated any virus from that, but we have screened environments which are dominated by, for example, mesophilic, extremely homophilic Archea. This is the lake red one in Senegal, close to Dakar, which close to the high season is absolutely dominated by Archaean species. This is now the tree of the potential host there, and this is now the viral diversity which we see here. So the viral diversity is really dominated by bizarre morphologies, many of which resemble those which we have seen in picotemophilik viruses, and there is a very low proportion of pet cell phages. They are less than 5% there, and I have to emphasize that in all other environments they are mostly dominant. So in this environment, where Archea dominate, there are very few of this type of phages, and also the metagenomic has shown that the genomes of these viruses are really, really very different. So next we wanted to see how work viruses of methanogens. And methanogens are known to be abundant in freshwater lakes. They produce like 20% of methane on our planet. So we were interested to see what are the viruses in Lake One, which is a beautiful lake, which is in the crater of the 7,000 years old crater, and it has two layers due to specificities, geographical specificities. So one is oxide mixed very well, and the other is never mixed here, down below the 60 meters. The whole depth of the lake is 92 meters, and here is an oxide zone in which dominate methanogens. And in the sediment also methanogens dominate, and specifically methanoseta, which is considered to be the major producer of the methane on our planet. And what could be observed in the sediment of this lake was this morphological diversity of viruses, which again is amazing. You see very little of phages, and the whole community is dominated with some known shapes, but also many unknown shapes, and this is something also very interesting. And we plan to isolate viruses from this environment, but until now we have not isolated, only observed them. In other laboratories, they did isolate viruses from hipothemophilic and extremely halophilic and methanogenic Archea, but most of them, unfortunately, are typical heterophages. And this dominance of this type of phages among isolated viruses of extreme halovirus are due to very biased approaches for their isolation, but they were really going for very basic phages. So this does not really reflect the situation in the environment. However, what I want to say with this slide is probably I have to conclude quite soon that the diversity of the viruses which is associated with Archea is really amazing. It includes all types of viruses which are known to be replicated in bacteria, but on the top of it, a lot of different novel morphotypes, and general picture which is arising is something like that the Archea virosphere is huge and includes bacterial virosphere as a small part of it. And here I want to make probably a very important comment that in the last half century, there has not been described any bacterial virus of new type. So all bacterial viruses which have been described and are being described, and they are described more than 5,000, are mainly heterozygous type. And in Archea virosphere, we have maybe several dozen Archea virus species, and they are huge in diversity. And there is strong reason to believe that what we see here, this is now something which was isolated and studied, is only the tip of the iceberg. And indeed, the Archea virosphere is huge in this diversity. Of course, one has to continue studies and verify this picture of the same here. But however, it immediately implies answering why this could be that situation. And our idea at the present is that probably the virosphere, Archea virosphere, as we see it now, reflects the ancestral diversity of viruses. Maybe virosphere at the time of last universal common ancestor or predating that. And that bacteria somehow have learned how to defend themselves from this huge diversity of viruses, and only very few viruses could go through this bottleneck, like, for example, head-and-tail viruses, which may be more intelligent than the other ones. And the rest of the viruses are replicated by Archea, maybe because they are more adapted to the situation of chronic stress, we don't know. Anyway, so to illustrate what I mean, I want to come back to one image. Come back to one image which I've already shown. This is the equalized cell with the pyramids for the aggressor virus, Archea virus. So, if there would not be the outer envelope on the people like self, then probably this virus would be able to escape. And when you look at this picture, it's science fiction of course, but you can imagine that bacteria could have developed this complex cell envelope in order to exclude, for example, this type of viruses for being replicated in the cells. Well, of course, this is just something to be clarified, but anyway, so what is the fact is that the Archea virus is much larger in the morphological diversity than the natural cells, and that should be an answers for this relation and reasons for that. And at the very end, I want to say that all what I have presented is a result of collaboration with many different people, and their names were represented below in the references to publications. But there are three people whom I really want to specifically thank. This is ifr48, who introduced me to this wonderful world of Archea viruses, and Stetter, who gave me the possibility to continue working on Archea viruses when ifr48 has retired, and Patrick Fortin, who now supports our research out in the at Institut Pasteur. And I thank you for that.
I think that to start with, I am an ecologist, more than an evolutionist. I'm an ecologist. So I believe that biodiversity is related to the communication of the different ecosystems. So I think that you get more biodiversity in the Archea just because the ecosystem where they live, the niche, do not communicate with the others. So the globalization phenomenon, I think, is general. So you get the same bacteriophage that could be infected, many of the different bacteria are very, very different in food or whatever. So they do not get this much specificity. Part of them, yes, but a lot of them are very different. So I think that the main thing is that the Archea, for a reason or another, maybe because they've been able to survive in very different conditions, live in small ecosystem where you get much more. So when you look on the Earth, there is more biodiversity, and I think exactly the same thing that when people discover all the islands on the Earth, where different species in all the island, but if you come back now, that everybody is communicating, many of these biodiversity is killed. So it means that everywhere, when you open the way, you open the road, you diminish the biodiversity. And I think it's the reason why they live in so different places that they do not communicate with the other, and then you can get ecosystem with very specific values, very specific factors, and very specific way of life that will disappear if you make a channel with all of them together.
But this will not explain diversity.
Oh yes. Oh yes, because when you live in a very specific niche, now the competition is very different, and you don't get the big, you don't get Coca-Cola. You can get all the drinks that you want, and then when Coca-Cola arrives, you will throw everything and everybody drinks Coca-Cola.
Well, anyway,
very
nice suggestion, but we have to still study and understand the reasons of all that. But what we see probably is really.
But macrophage, Kristen have been working with this in forest as well. So as soon as human beings are coming in a place, the biodiversity of macrophages is falling down very quickly. Just because you communicate and you link, and then the more fit in this situation will kill the others.
Can you one reason definitely?
Huh?
Can you that reason as well? Yes, definitely.
Because it's mutual, it's globalization.
Are these viruses encoding anything to get rid of the host DNA?
Yes, I think that there are some nucleases encoded there. And
And how do they get rid specifically of the host DNA and not of their own DNA?
Well, this is a very good question which we would love to answer. So some nucleases were actually recognized as nucleases due to structural genomics project. For example, one nuclease was recognized as being such as a result of works in Christian Campio's lab. So it was unexpected nucleases to be anything but nucleases with structural biology. So it's not very easy to identify what protein is.
But I would like to bring you to my next question. Is that have you've noticed that viruses are including glycosyl transferases exactly like some of the bacteriophages that will protect their own DNA by glycosylation?
Well, why they are glycosylated, and they are quite common in biology, especially in Archea, because very limited